Hey, back with another video. Today we're going to react to Bill O'Reilly debates DEI with Cornel West. Very smart man. You know, subscribe, turn post notifications, and let's get it. Let's go. Both of these guys are very smart, so this is going to be a good conversation. Let's go.
Let's bring in a guy who sees it differently. Known him a long time. His name is Cornel West. All right, he is a college professor, taught at Harvard, Princeton, and he's now at the Union Theological Seminary. He's got a new book out with another professor, Robert George. Here's the book. I was reading it last night. Truth Matters, Dialogue on Fruitful Disagreement in an Age of Division. I guess Professor George is a little more conservative than Cornel West, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is more conservative than Dr. West. And he joins us now from New York City. You know, I know this DEI executive order signed by Donald Trump wasn't in play when this book was written. But I want to get your feeling on it. I have no problem with diversity. I think that's a strength of the country. I know that's provable. I have no problem with inclusion. I want every American to have an equal pathway to success. I have a big problem with equity, the favoring certain groups because of gender, skin color, that kind of thing. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, one, I think the important thing, though, brother, and thank you so much for having me on. It's been a long time since we've had a chance to have these conversations that we used to have. But the important thing is just trying to keep a moral and spiritual compass at the center. So even before we talk about DEI, talk about foreign policy, it seems to me we're at a moment now where we're seeing a kind of expansion of what I'd call a gangsterizing sensibility, which is push integrity, push honesty, push decency aside. And so empathy becomes an enemy, cruelty becomes a strategy, and truth becomes an afterthought. So Brother Robbie George, and he is a conservative Catholic brother who I love very deeply and respect. We taught together for 20 years at Princeton. We have deep ideological and political disagreements, but he's my brother. And he's in many ways like family. So the question becomes, how do you stay in contact with the humanity of other people that you have deep disagreement in a moment in which your culture is being more and more gangsterized? So
give me an example of the gangsterism. Give me one very vivid example of the gangsterism.
Yeah, good, wonderful question. You remember the great Rabbi Heschel said, indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. I think there's an indifference to vulnerable people, the people who are on the margins, people who are weak and feeble. There's not an attempt to embrace and have a compassion, even when we have disagreements in policy. When you make the point, for example, about the brother who was taken to the El Salvadorian prison, right? And we know that they got it wrong, because every institution is going to be fallen in some way. These are human beings. They definitely got it wrong, and we ought to bring him back. I don't hear that from any of the officials in Washington. They said they're not interested, even though they know that he's there.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Donald Trump, the president, should have said, we're going to bring him back, as I mentioned.
Absolutely.
All right, let me...
So they really did make a mistake about the guy in El Salvador. Wow, that's scary. That's scary as hell, man.
You learned this at Marist College. You learned this from William and Winifred. There's got to be some moral sensibility.
I got it.
Even in a moment of high polarization.
And I do not disagree with that. I don't. I think that you have to do the right thing. And the right thing is fairly clear to most people. But we live in a country that's divided between the politicians, the ruling class, and the folks. I'll submit to you, based on data, because I know you're a big shot Ivy League professor.
Wow, Union Seminary, brother.
I know, but I got a Harvard degree. You taught there.
You know what I love about Cornel West? He has a difference of opinions from conservatives, but he definitely treats them as they're human, like they're his brothers and sisters, and that's a really good way to approach every conversation that you hop into. 100%.
Okay. Kennedy's
the American
well deserved.
Well, I don't know about that, but the American people are the most generous people on earth. All right?
I agree with that.
We give more money to help poor people, marginalized people, than any other population, okay? And our system, both state and local and federal, is loaded with entitlements for marginalized people. So that even the poorest in America have air conditioning, computers, refrigerators, cars. Our poor live better than European middle class. So I don't know whether this...
That's a huge stretch. No, that's a huge stretch. I disagree with that.
The tsunami wave that you're portraying of insensitivity really exists.
Well, my brother, you know we've got about 1.4 homeless people in the country.
Mostly drug addicted. Mostly people who cannot earn a living.
They don't have televisions. They out in the cold. I live in Harlem. I can see them. I give them money from my pocket. So
but you know what they're doing with the money? They're buying heroin with it. And fentanyl with it.
No, but some of them are unemployed, and actually some of them...
Not many.
Well, I don't think you can say that the vast majority are, and I've spent a lot of time with it.
Well, the stat is between 75 and 80% of homeless people are addicted to substance. That's the stat.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they're not worthy of a certain kind of compassion.
But you can give them as much...
Yeah, no one said nothing about them not being worthy of certain compassion, but that's definitely something that we need to work on.
Money as you want, and the money's going for substance. All right? The only time they see a television is when they steal it and sell it. Come on.
But we've got 1 out of 5 children who are in poverty, 2 out of 5
because their parents are substance abusers.
Well, no. You know the vast majority of children who are poor don't have parents who are substance abusers.
75% of all... No. Come on. We're academics here. 75% of all abused and neglected children are the sires of addicted adults. 75%.
I haven't seen that statistic. Now, if that's the case...
Department of Health and Human Services, just go to them and they'll get it.
I'd have to see that, though. But for me, whatever their condition, they deserve serious attention because they're human beings made in the image of God.
They deserve to be treated with dignity.
Absolutely. That's what we do agree.
You have to isolate them in order to do that.
Well, I can understand that, too. But the crucial point is the dignity, because we're living in a time in which it's so easy to lose the dignity. So, for example, when we talk about DEI, right?
Okay.
Now, I've never been a big DEI person. Why? Because I believe in truth, justice, and love. That's what I'm willing to live and die for. I'm not willing to die for diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI was an attempt to respond to the fact that for so long, black people enslaved for 244 years, nearly 100 years of lynching, Jim Crow, Jane Crow, and segregation. And we finally raised the question, how are we going to treat black people fairly and decently in a society where they have not been treated that way? So we started with affirmative action. We had debates over affirmative action. We must ensure that people are qualified, but when they're qualified, they must not be discriminated against.
100% with you.
But I don't think DEI was created for that because it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's all like women, military veterans, older people. Like DEI programs weren't just for black people. It was for a vast majority of people that could be discriminated on in the workforce just because of a modality of who they are. Like DEI was not only for black people. That's the part that's really confusing me about this conversation.
Why? Because we're concerned about truth.
Yeah, 100% with you. But here's where you're making your mistake. You don't correct historical wrongs by creating contemporary wrongs.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that.
To apply college admission or job acceptance based on skin color or gender is wrong.
Oh, I agree with that.
All right, so we're on the same page there for sure.
But part of the challenge is this, though.
But then the question will be, how do you do it? I know that's probably what he's going to say next. How do you make society fair for everybody? Because if we live in a meritocracy, let's talk about like the meritocracy. Let's talk about if people want to live in a meritocracy, let's talk about it. Like, how qualified is the military general right now that Trump appointed? How qualified is he really? How qualified is Linda McMahon to run the Department of Education? How qualified is she really? If you think about it, if you really think about it, none of these people, Linda McMahon has no experience in education. The general may have had experience in the military, but just because he's in the military doesn't necessarily mean he's more qualified than somebody who was there 40 years to run it. I don't know, it's different, man.
Right there, brother. As you know, for so long, when the pool of the qualified was one in which, going back to the history of Harvard, right? Was anti-Catholic, was anti-Jewish, was deeply anti-black. It was the WASP, it was the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants qualified who were chosen. Qualified Irish couldn't get in. Qualified Jews couldn't get, for the most part, couldn't get in. Yeah, quotas for Jews. Qualified black folk could hardly get in. W.B. Du Bois, PhD from Harvard, writes a dissertation in German and University of Humboldt in Berlin. He can't think about getting a job in the university. We know that's racist. That's old racism, just like you got an anti-Catholicism and you had anti-Jewish sentiment. Now you move to the 60s and we say, oh, now we can expand the pool of the qualified. And we're not talking about the unqualified.
And I agree that that should happen, and that's why I was a big factor in President Obama's Brothers Keeper program, because that's the pathway. And here's my last question for you.
Brothers Keepers program, I'm going to look into that. I'm interested. That's interesting. I never heard of that. I'm going to look into it.
I want you to think about this question. I believe that equity, which is now against the law by the executive order of President Trump, creates a culture of dependence and is actually insulting to the people who get hired or accepted in college because of it. It's basically saying to you, you know, you're not good enough to compete, so we're going to get you in here based on something that doesn't have anything to do with the competition. And I believe that that creates a culture of dependency that Big Brother government, okay, or Big Brother Harvard or Princeton or whoever, we're going to decide that you need a little help. I don't think that's right. Last word.
This is a 50-50 like point though. This is like a 50-50 point to me, right? So I understand pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? But I also understand that there are people in society that need help to a degree. So like, I don't think that anybody who actually got that help would see it that way, especially if it took them to the next level of wherever they wanted to go. I know plenty of people who are getting in through DEI programs, and they're not looking at it like, oh my God, I'm not any good. I'm just no. They look at it like, dang, thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to have it, and they go off and make success in their lives. People who are homeless, I've seen take DEI programs and move from homelessness into wealth. Not necessarily wealth, but at least in the middle class, you know what I mean? And that's a lot better than what it is. So I don't know. I don't think it's always going to turn out that way. But I do think there's some truth in what Bill O'Reilly just said, though, too.
I think that you make a very important point. But the crucial thing is, how are we going to make sure that people who have been hated and despised like black folk are treated fairly and justly?
Facts.
Because if you have a history of a country where in the name of merit you allow white male mediocrity, and you know there is a history of white
it happened, sure.
History of white
absolutely happened.
Mediocrity.
Absolutely happened.
And through family connections and legacies and so forth and so on. Where is the fairness? Where is the truth? Where is the compassion?
Well, extra help is what I got when I needed it in biology and geometry, and extra help is fine, but not exclusionary equity policies. The book is Truth Matters. I want everybody, and you know what? You know, it's really worthy. And I'm sorry you left Harvard, by the way. You want to tell us real quick why you left Harvard?
Well, we had a major struggle over the issues of the Palestinian struggle and my connection with what's going on in Gaza. And
it was all of that. All right.
All of that going on. And for me, I believe in lifting every voice. Everybody has a right to be wrong. They have a right to be right.
Okay. Well, say, I can't identify with that, doctor, because I'm never wrong. Right. Thanks for coming on in. We appreciate it. We'll check it out.
With the family, man.
It's good to see you again. Thank you.
I love that conversation, man. It's two Americans learning to get along. Two Americans getting along in a conversation. I love that conversation. That was good. All right, y'all. Hey, what y'all think? Tell me what y'all think of DEI program. Should they go? Should they stay? Peace.